Okay, hello. This is Wmpyr here to talk about this book right here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, sorry about the glare. And I want to talk to you guys about the first chapter, which was it's a very short chapter, but very interesting. Lots of important stuff in there. And I'm thinking I might go chapter by chapter, but that's a lot of chapters. But okay, so actually, you know what? It's not even a chapter one. My bad. It says prologue. So basically, in a nutshell, what he's saying is that saying several interesting things. The first one is he's saying that the sword in Japan, the ken, or aka tsurugi. So that's called the ken equals sword. Okay, ken came before katana. Okay, so the katana is a single edge sword. So the edge is only on one side. Katana is a very specific weapon. People just think it's a samurai sword or it's a Japanese sword. It is, but there's lots of swords in Japan, right? And ken is more like your traditional, from what this book says, double edged. So think more like what you would see like in Europe or whatever. So from ken came the katana. So there was an evolution that they went from double edged to single edge. So I'm interested to seeing why, to try to understand why they changed it from that into the katana. What's up with the katana, right? So that's very, very interesting to me. The other thing that this first part they talk about is that the sword is very mythical in Japan, that it has connections to mythical origins, deities, things of that nature. And in Europe, a good example for people to understand that, I would say, is King Arthur, when you're talking about like Excalibur. And I've never read the King Arthur, the books that mention. I've read a little bit, but not the complete volumes or anything like that. In it, my understanding is Excalibur is one of many magical swords. It's not just Excalibur. So, you know, it's kind of like that. So in Japan, there's tons of mythical swords in history. And I even remember when I researched my own ancestor, that he had a mythical sword called the lightning splitter. Okay. So anyway, that is tied into their folklore. Now, what is important about that, I have to say, is that um, they're saying that when you're training in martial arts, right? When you are training in martial arts, it says right here that you're going to go into, he travels in the other world, both spiritually and physically, domestically and abroad, and immerses himself in extreme training. Okay, so it's like, what the hell are you talking about, right? Um, in the religious field, he achieves enlightenment with the help of deities. In the field of technique, he invents his original, consummate skills by listening to the voices of deities. Wow, that's some intense stuff. Okay, so it's kind of like talking about like when you're training, right? You're training and what? You have a teacher or a coach, right? I don't care what you're training in. It could be MMA, it could be Muay Thai kickboxing, it could be judo, it could be, kung fu, whatever. So they're teaching you stuff. They're telling you do this, do that. Okay. Well, what they're talking about here is at some point you're working on the stuff on your own to make it your own. Okay. And as you do that, there has to be some kind of what they're presenting to you, they're saying, here, this is a technique for you to use in your fight coming up, or whatever, or for a self-defense situation that might happen or may not. So it's for some future usage, right? They're giving you a technique. They say, practice this. They give it to you. It's an outside thing, right? And at some point, that has to become internalized. And if you just go by Western way of thinking, it's like, oh yeah, muscle memory. It's a little bit more than just muscle memory, because we know that in a fight situation, you could be super skilled, all right? You could have it, like we've seen people like, do amazing things like with piano, yo-yos, just flipping a pen around with their fingers, whatever the case, that's skill, right? But that's not combat. Or that's not even performing yet. Just being able to do it, in practice is one thing, but then being able to perform it, so apply it into combat. And for arts, it's different. You got to be able to like capture the listeners, the audience's souls. Okay, so that's a different thing. But that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Is it's not just a skill. You got to go beyond skill, right? And what is that? It's not just tons of repetition and you get it down. It's more than that. It's something that awakens inside of you. And I believe that's what they're talking about. So that awakening to where you can use this skill in combat to vanquish evil or whatever it is, and there's a lot of responsibilities there. It's not just I kill this bad guy and that's it, No, because one of the things that's repeated in this book that I've seen over and over in this book is he says that when you get to the high enough level, you don't kill the bad guy. You basically you solve the situation without hurting them. So that's kind of something that's been mentioned here. So I think at some point we're studying combat and we get so obsessed with combat that that's all we can do, where we could just hurt the other person. Whether that's important or whether that solves the problem or not, that's all we turn into, is I could inflict violence to the other person because it's combat. That's all I can do. But then he's saying that there's some kind of enlightenment that happens where you go beyond that and you don't have to do that. So I feel like for those kinds of things, it's more than just muscle memory. Now we're talking, it has to have a spiritual understanding. It has to go with your mental psyche, a lot of morals, ethics, all that has to come together with your technique. And it has to make sense. So I believe in order for that to happen, they're talking about like traveling to some realm, which from a Western point of view, we could call it this crazy realm. It's a spiritual realm. But even in Western culture, you look at the mind and look up paintings of what the mind is, or what the spiritual world is, like whether it's heaven or hell. You're seeing fantastical paintings. And if you're trying to look at the inside of someone's mind and try to literally draw that, it's going to be a fantastical. I don't think it's a very logical painting, where it's like compartments and perfectly clean. And, I don't think so. It's stuff that don't make sense. So for them to say that, you're going to go into deities and this and that, I don't think it's really out of place if you think of it that way. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. That's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.